Ladies and gentlemen. Ha! Just kidding, there are no gentlemen on YouTube. All you have to do is look at the skeevy, skin-crawlingly sleazy comments left on any video at all with a pretty girl in it to be sure of that. Okay, so that's a bit off topic, but it's been really bugging me lately. Guys, just stop being such sleazebags on the internet, really! Ugh! I am Blunty, and today I'd like to break down for you the performance and experience of shooting with Sony's newest, biggest, most impressive full-frame shooter, camera, whatchamacallit thingy, the a99. To start with, in most ways, it's very much like the Alpha 77, which I reviewed a little earlier this year and which I was quite impressed by. But the new big boy on Sony's plinth bears an obvious and significant difference. The Alpha 99 wraps itself around a full-frame sensor. The build is cored by a light and strong magnesium alloy chassis. It's weather-sealed, it spits out 24 megapixel stills, it's got that tilt-swivel flip-flop screen, which, as is common for Sony screens, is really nice, and the viewfinder is once again an OLED screen that, while not an optical portal through the lens like a DSLR offers, is still bewilderingly crispy. And I have to admit, I actually like it more than an optical viewfinder now. It's just that good. The only thing I don't like is the slight lag it has when the sensor detects your face mushed up against the camera. It's not a long lag, but it is certainly noticeable. And when I say noticeable, I mean you never ever stop constantly noticing it every time you lift the camera to your face. The buttons are pretty much identical with the Alpha 77. They've got a good tactile feedback and are all well positioned. Muscle memory sets in pretty fast here because things are laid out nice and sensible like. Oh, and look at this, look at this, look at this. Sony have finally listened to the screaming, hollering, frustrated masses and replaced the annoying proprietary Minolta-style hot shoe for a full-on standard hot shoe. Can I get a thank you? And it has some extra contacts built in at the end there for clever accessories to go in. So I'm pretty happy now that I can finally stop whinging about the non-standard hot shoe in every single Sony camera review I make from here on in. Thank you very much, Sony. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Around the side, you've got all your in and out ports. It's all boring and utilitarian here. USB, HDMI, microphone, headphone, all that kind of stuff. Around the other side, it's a set of twin SD ports, which you can configure in various ways, like having an instant backup made of every shot you take, or using it as an overflow, or even putting stills on one and video on the other. Always a nifty feature to have in pro-level gear. The menu is completely standard Sony fare. It's not my favourite menu system out there, as some things are a little more buried than I'd like, but it's not difficult by any measure. It's laid out fairly logically, and things are well labelled. The on-screen options are actually very nice, slightly tweaked and more serious-ofied from the Alpha 77 model. It has less flair and more boring, but still hands over very quick access to lots of useful things like settings and picture modes in the level and such. And just like I used to whine about the hot shoe in every Sony camera review, now comes the time when I gush with exuberance at the class-leading and utterly superb focus peaking. Any lens, any subject, anytime, Sony's focus peaking is unmatched in making it intuitive and blisteringly fast and wildly easy to absolutely nail manual focus every time. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it forevermore. I love it. I want every camera I ever lay hands on to have it. Now then, that's the hardware dealt with. It's a predictably confidence-inducing experience from all sides. Now it's time to see if performance measures up. We'll start with video, because that's just how I roll. On the video side of things, it's quite lovely. All else being equal, there's just no parallel to that beautiful aesthetic you get from a proper full-frame sensor, in stills or in video, but especially in video. And the sweet-ass focus peaking makes it real easy to focus, even on the little B here, with your depth of field is this narrow. And the detail resolved by that XML sensor will put several popular video mode DSLRs to shame. You get a small selection of frame rates and resolutions, of course, 25p in a couple of different bit rates and 50i or 50p, so you can conform your footage down and get that lovely smooth and utterly crisp half-speed slow motion. Things really are beautifully smooth when it comes to colour and gradations. It's a very natural palette in the default settings, but still vibrant and well saturated with crisp and extremely pleasing contrast. All this video is direct off the camera, by the way. No colour grading or filters have been applied. You can also set it up for a much flatter picture profile, much more suitable for heavy grading in post-production if you like. But an image this good sucked right off the memory card can really speed up your post-production workflow on quick projects and short deadlines. It should really go without saying that, of course, a camera at this level throws you complete manual control in video mode and adjustments on the fly too, though it is working with lenses made for stills, so things like live aperture adjustments aren't exactly buttery smooth. Par for the course really, no surprises. There is a continuous autofocus mode. It's full-time phase detect, which is really nice, but it has its limits. It only works in P mode, and it only works at a set aperture, which is rather limiting. But on the plus side, it really does work quite nicely. It tracks really well, smooth and accurate. It's not laser fast, but it's not unusably sluggish either. But frankly, let's be honest, anyone shooting video on this in any serious way will be using the superb focus peaking for proper manual control of focus anyway. Being a full-frame camera though, there is one thing where they all stumble a little, and that is with the infamous rolling shutter effect, aka the jello effect. A lot of cameras have this to various levels, but the bigger the CMOS sensor, the more pronounced it can be, and it's the worst on the full-frame sensors, and some cameras compensate for it better than others. The Sony does okay at slow to moderate panning speeds, but whip pans are the usual mess of tilty wobbly mess. And while we're on the subject of movement, another thing I always find myself raving about in Sony camera reviews is here too, their image stabilization. Once more, it's class leading. It's like some kind of stupid crazy magic it works so well. There is no one else who does it better than Sony do. I love it. When it comes to low light video, the a99 holds up quite well, keeping things clear and relatively noise-free even in challenging situations. Detail is held super crisp and the colours stay natural and nicely saturated. It's not until you push the ISO up to the top edges that noise creeps in. It's fairly fine-grained, but there is a fair amount of colour noise in there, which makes it a bit ugly. And when I went ridiculous to the extreme, it becomes unusable. But that said, as bad as this looks, it's worth keeping in mind that this scene was wildly dark, and I only shot it to see how bad the noise can actually get. Even the best low-light shooters out there would struggle with this scene, seriously. So on balance, the Sony does quite nicely in any reasonable condition. Not the best I've ever used in the dark, but I don't know, probably in the top 5 pretty easily or something. The onboard mics are even capable of holding their own nicely. I'd still use an external mic for anything serious, of course, but for quick stuff or as for reference, environmental, and backup audio, they're very capable indeed. And now for the meat of things on the stills performance. Just like the Alpha 77, things were super crisp with terrific amounts of detail, and colour and contrast and tones and dynamic range were all very impressive. And interestingly, the Alpha 99 is one of the few big full-frame shooters I've gone wandering the streets with that didn't make me feel ridiculously conspicuous. I mean, sure, it's still a fairly big camera with a big fat lens on the front, but it still felt more subtle somehow. In fact, it made a surprisingly nice street shooter, and I came away from my walks with it quite happy and impressed by what I'd pulled off the card. Unlike the video stuff I showed you, some of these pics have been edited in post, and some are shot with the built-in picture modes and effects. And they're all from the in-camera JPEGs, as unfortunately when I had the review unit, raw file compatibility in Aperture, my editing software of choice, hadn't been updated yet. But still, if this is the kind of dynamic range and colour and contrast spat out by the onboard JPEG engine, imagine what you could do pushing around full-on RAW files. There's a built-in auto HDR mode and a dynamic range optimizer mode, which spit out very nice results too, delivering much more picture information with one shutter press and without introducing those weird haloing effects and the like you so often see with one-click HDR options in camera or even in apps. So while on some cameras these features are an interesting toy, here they're a useful tool. The dynamic range optimizer in particular yielded very usable results. You can also shoot in various bracketing modes, so you can take full manual control in post-production rather than rely on the in-camera's cleverness, and happily the setup for this is quick and easy to access and use. And its low-light stills are a bigger story than the low-light video. This time things can get utterly glorious, super clean, tack-sharp low-light and long-exposure images burst forth from the camera. The onboard long-exposure noise reduction function does a fantastic job, and the colour it can see when my own eyes can't is truly impressive. And even shooting handheld at 3200 ISO yields joy-bringing results. Sony's Sweep Panorama mode tags along here too, and unsurprisingly it works every bit as well as it does on the lower-end snappers where it first made its appearance. Press the shutter, sweep your camera across the scene, and the camera does all the work, and I'm yet to see it make any ugly mistakes in the stitching. A few controlled condition test shots jumping up the ISO range will reveal that noise is absent or extremely well controlled all the way to 3200. 6400 is okay, and up to 16,000 is remarkably well detailed still, but beyond that the option is there, but you'll hit a noise level that most will find unacceptable for any practical use. Like I said in the beginning, in many ways, and in fact if I'm fair, in almost all ways, the Alpha 99 is very much like the Alpha 77. There's a few little tweaks and a bit of extra polish here and there, but the only real difference in an obvious and practical sense is that you're trading in a slower continuous fire mode for the glory of that full frame aesthetic, and a little jump forward in low light performance. If I were personally choosing between the two right now, it'd be a very tough decision, I have to be honest. I think I'd be weighted towards the 77 simply because it feels like it delivers a bigger bang for the dollars you throw at it. But these big full frame image sensors really do deliver an aesthetic that you just can't match with the smaller APS-C sensors. And it's that unique look and the big fistful of extra creative power it delivers that are the reason to buy the Alpha 99 over the Alpha 77. Either way you go, you're getting a pretty damn good camera in my opinion. Thanks for watching, I am Blunty, and I'll catch you next time.